Good evening, everyone. I'm William Lanzillo, the studio coordinator of Sculpture. Thank you. Sculpture, yeah. Welcome to our summer faculty lecture series. I want to welcome our virtual participants watching tonight, as well as our Board of Trustees and National Council. Thank you for your support. Tonight we'll be hearing from two artists, Leigh Garcia and Trey Hill. Before we begin, please silence your cell phones. Anderson Ranch acknowledges that our campus resides on the traditional ancestral territory of the Ute people who've called the Roaring Fork Valley and beyond home for over 800 years. Through our mission to promote a wide range of arts, cultures, and voices, we commit to partner with and honor the indigenous ancestors and residents of the sacred land where we learn, work, and create. Our first speaker will be Leigh Garcia, who is teaching in printmaking this week. Yeah, printmaking. Garcia was born and raised in Dallas, Texas. Garcia received her MFA from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and BFA from the University of North Texas. She currently lives in Knoxville, Tennessee, where she is an associate professor of printmaking at the University of Tennessee. Please join me in welcoming Leigh.
Gotta pull this way down here. Okay, hi everyone. Thank y'all so much for being here. I know you're in the middle of a really exciting time in the week where you're just getting projects started and probably want to be in the studio. But thanks for being here. Thank you, Anderson Ranch, and everyone who had a part in inviting me here. It's really an honor, and I've been looking at all the pictures on the wall of previous instructors and stuff, and it's just humbling to be included in that. Let's see. Oh, it was at the very last slide. Close your eyes. Okay. The end. Thank you. So, like we said, sorry, Christopher, is it? No, what's your name? William. I'm so sorry. Like William said, my name is Leigh Garcia. I use she, her pronouns. I'm originally from Dallas, Texas. I heard like a woo woo. Is somebody from Dallas? Yay! Okay, we got to talk later. But I currently live in Knoxville, Tennessee, where I'm an associate professor of printmaking at UT Knoxville. This is my baby, Diego. I miss him very much right now. So for the past 10 years, I've been making work about undocumented immigration between Mexico and the United States and the complicated relationship between white Texans and Mexicans. And this is largely due to the fact that my own identity resides between these two cultures. So this is my sister Meg and I are full biological siblings. We're both half white, half Mexican American. So on our mom's side, we are 7th generation Texans of European descent. So this is like pre-Civil War, very long line of stereotypical white cattle farmers. And then on our dad's side, we are 2nd generation Mexican Americans. So my grandfather swam across the Rio Grande to get to the United States in the 1940s, and he did this through undocumented immigration. And because I grew up between these two cultures, races, and ethnicities, I've always been hyper aware of race and the long, complicated history between Texas and Mexico. And as many of y'all know, Texas used to be part of Mexico, and then before Mexico, this was, of course, all indigenous land. So politically, socially, culturally, racially, there is just a lot to unpack. And of course, one topic at the forefront of all of this is undocumented immigration. Some of you may be aware of this, but in recent years, Border Patrol agents have adopted a practice of building these tire contraptions, and then they drag them along the border wall to essentially comb the ground or the earth or the sand so that they can then identify footprints in the ground and track down undocumented people. So this is not something that ICE as an organization puts together. This is something that individual Border Patrol agents have come up with. They make them on the weekends, I guess. I don't know. It's this vigilante mentality, right? So they're going out of their way to track down human beings, which is very disturbing to me. And we're, of course, seeing this play out across our country right now in even more violent ways, with daily deportations at the hands of ICE agents who are masked, oftentimes not wearing uniforms. So in this print, Vigilantes, I was thinking about how my ancestors might feel about contemporary Border Patrol practices. So in the sand here, we have soldaderas, or women of the Mexican Revolution. There are Tlaxcalan, indigenous Mexicans, which is the tribe that I am a descendant of, as well as pre-Columbian, as well as some vaqueros, or Mexican cowboys. So just thinking again about how they would respond to this sort of contemporary event. And similarly, in July of 2023, you may have seen this in the news, that Texas Governor Greg Abbott has this new policy, Operation Lone Star, with this floating border wall in the Rio Grande River. So this is made of plastic buoys. They are wrapped with a lot of saw blades and barbed wire. It's over 1,000 feet long, and it's between Eagle Pass, Texas, and Piedras Negras. A federal judge recently ruled that this is unconstitutional, but Abbott has appealed, stating that Texas is justified in constructing the floating barrier as an exercise of self-defense in the face of an invasion of unauthorized migrants. So those are his words. And I researched this just to kind of see where it's at right now, and it's currently still up. It's in the Rio Grande right now, but it's being bounced around a bunch of different courts. This screen print is a diptych to the previous one, Vigilantes, and again depicts my Mexican ancestors, this time in the water, seemingly attacking the floating border wall. And it's also worth mentioning that this border wall has been attributed to some public safety issues, and there have actually been 2 deaths associated with it. Unfortunately, those who do make it across safely to the United States can often become trapped in systems that take advantage of their immigration status. A 2022 study done by the Center for Migration Studies found that an estimated 45% of the US agricultural workers are undocumented. So that's like half, almost half of the people that are picking our food that we eat every day are undocumented and are currently facing deportation right now. So many of these people pick strawberries and cotton, which are really physically demanding crops to pick. I don't know how many of you have ever picked a strawberry, but it's really low to the ground, so you're bending over for really long, extended periods of time. Because of their immigration status, a lot of them lack decent housing, job security, representation, the ability to file grievances, and they can even become victims of labor trafficking. While there are a few protections for undocumented immigrants in the United States, a lot of them are currently being revoked. So DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, you've probably heard of, is a policy that was put into effect in 2012 by the Obama administration. And just a little bit about it, you have to meet a whole lot of criteria to become a DACA recipient, and the government is actually not accepting new applicants right now. So those who have been grandfathered in are currently safe from deportation, but as we all know, things are changing daily. So we'll see what happens. But a lot of the DACA recipients, or as they refer to themselves, dreamers, use a monarch butterfly as a symbol for their status. And this is, of course, because monarch butterflies migrate from Canada, US, to Mexico, regardless of if there's a border wall or not. So in this screen print, relief print, sculpture, I was thinking about monarch butterflies, and so this is a fly tarp, which is made to catch flies or bad things. And so this whole idea of the bad immigrant, well, most immigrants are here just trying to make a living and build a life. So as I mentioned before, my grandfather was an undocumented immigrant. Granted, this was in the 1940s up until about 2000, so things back then were not as wild or hard as they are for undocumented immigrants now. But I just remember as a kid hearing his story of immigration, and it was this very taboo thing in my family. We'd be like, oh, did you know Grandpa swam across, that's crazy. My cousins and I would talk about it at night, when our aunts and everybody were asleep or whatever. But the more that undocumented immigration has come to the forefront of politics in the United States, I feel it's actually helped my family and I to talk about these things, and it's not something so taboo anymore. It's something we're actually really proud of, that he did that for us, right? So in this piece, I was thinking about my experience as a very privileged, half-white, educated, second-generation Mexican-American, and comparing my experience with his, what I think of now as like a symbolic baptism into a new life. So a big shift that I've been making in my work, maybe in the past year or two, is breaking from sort of traditional printmaking to more collage-based work. And this is largely because I am now obsessed with paper making. So I've already talked a bunch of y'all's ear off about this if you sat next to me at lunch probably. But yeah, I've just been making my own paper, and I kind of started it as a way of printing on, and then I've realized it's just like you can do so much more with it. So you can cast with it and make sculptures with it. I've been doing like pulp painting, and well, you'll see soon. So this is a piece where I've been thinking again about the privileges that I've been born into as a second-generation Mexican-American, and kind of comparing these with some of my family members who've had harder lives. So this piece, Texas 1015, is comparing my father and my experience with the onion. So Texas 1015 is a type of onion named for its planting date of October 15th. And it's a crop my dad's really familiar with because he grew up picking it as a kid, like, from the age he was like 7 up until high school. And he would pick them and sack them. And my experience with the onion is like, I go to the store, I buy a bag, I go home, I cut it. And even that, I'm like, this sucks. Like, I hate cutting onions. It's so much work. So just thinking how funny that is. Oh, and just a little bit about the material and process in this one. So the background is onion papyrus. So I took an onion and I sliced it up, boiled it, and then dried it flat. So it's kind of like a chip, an onion chip. Delicious. In 2020, I feel like everyone has to include like their pandemic artwork in their slides, right? So my 2020 experience was that my sister Meg came to live with my husband and I for 9 months, and we had a really great time living together. We got in some of the biggest fights we've ever had, but also got even closer, and we cooked a lot together, which we hadn't really done since we were kids living together. So a lot of the meals we made were tortilla-based meals. We'd make things like migas and tacos and chilaquiles. And it made me laugh because my grandmother, Peta, and her sister, Carmen, grew up really close in Monterrey, and they would do the same thing as us. They'd be making these tortilla-based meals together, but their version is like going to the mercado to buy corn and then grinding it with a metate and then hand-making, making the masa and hand-making the tortillas, cooking on the comal, like this very labor-intensive process. And then my sister and I were just popping over to the grocery store in Ohio and getting these like disgusting tortillas that my grandmother's probably like rolling over in her grave, seeing us eat and cook, and we're like, oh, this is so good. So again, just kind of comparing our experiences with those of our family members, but also reflecting on how, these things cycle, and we're still feeling close with our sister and enjoying sisterhood while making these tortilla-based meals. And this piece I was really thankful to have displayed in a digitally printed temporary mural. This was in downtown Cleveland. And yeah, just seeing my grandmother's portrait that big was really awesome. In my most recent body of work, I've been celebrating my grandfather, Nicho, who I've talked a little bit about. So he was born and raised in Monterrey, Mexico, which is in northern Mexico, crossed the border and settled in Harlingen, Texas, where my dad was raised, which is a border town. But he was a tile worker, so he, all over South Texas, there are buildings that he worked on, and his tiles still are in probably today. So I've been thinking a lot about how my experience in my life is just like completely different from my grandfather's. He only made it to the 3rd grade. He had a 3rd grade education. And here I am, a professor, so like, wow, what a difference just 2 generations can make. But at the same time, there are a lot of things in my life daily that I do that he did as well. So I'm using like a pencil and a ruler, and I'm thinking about craft and beauty and technique, and it's just amazing to me that some of these things can continue. So in this piece, I was using, I guess, my profession as an artist or paper maker to celebrate my grandfathers, and then thinking about the kind of hidden labor behind a lot of things like construction that we just take for granted, right? So you'll see he's got, his portrait is here in the thin set in the background. Just thinking again how cool it is that his spirit is alive in these buildings still today. So I'm gonna play a process video on that one. I love me an Instagram reel, so you're about to see a bunch.
Aquel que trabaja se ganará el pan y su frente en alto siempre llevará y estará orgulloso siempre lleno de felicidad porque a su familia un
So thanks. Yeah, I love that song too. So that piece was at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Cleveland, and it was really cool because it just happened to be good timing where my entire family from Texas came up and saw the piece, and a lot of them have like been in art museum like one time. You know, they were like, "Oh, we never do this," and we all saw the piece together. It was really emotional for me and awesome. And I think you know, a lot of the work that I've been making for like 10 years is really heavy. It's like political and exhausting, and it's like hard to talk about. Like I always want to cry when I'm doing these kind of things. But the work about my grandfather has really sparked a lot of more joy for me and like pride, and it's helped me just like get back in the studio and like be excited and happy to be there. So I know there's a lot of crazy stuff in the world right now that I want to respond to, but this kind of feels like a good thing for me right now. So I've really been diving into this tile-based work, making some intaglio prints of them. So here's a little process video on that. So that was at Northern Illinois University with some students helping me print that. And I cut those up and made them into some collages. I've been working, like I said, in paper making. So these are some paper, like cast paper pencils that I made that I then made into the collages as well. And then I've been thinking a lot about this photo that I took of my grandfather's ranch that he built in Atongo, which is right outside Monterrey. I was there just a couple years ago and took a bunch of photos for kind of reference imagery, and this was one that I found of this tile that he used in his bathroom. And I just thought it was significant because here's someone with a third grade education who's making these like art decisions, design, compositional decisions, with a very limited amount of money that he had as well. So I made a sculpture out of that. Process video here.
Los albañiles son hombres que usan la cal y la arena. El ruido que ellos se cargan es pura plata que suena. Son de la tierra bendita, la de la Virgen Morena. Muchachos, que la cuchara es de acero. Hay que gozar de placeres, aunque el mundo es traicionero. Que vivan los albañiles que saben rolar dinero.
And so these became a solo show at the Camp Museum of Art that was up this past year. It took down in March, I think it was. And just a little bit about that process. So you saw that's paper making, right? So that's paper pulp being put through craft foam stencils. And I've been using my Cricut cutter to make a lot of these. I was hand cutting them for a while, but I'm getting really into like the digital side of making and hoping to learn more about that. But it's also like printmaking, you know, it's stencils, it's repeatable, it's making an addition, so it feels really in line with my printmaking practice as well. So I think I've got like one more process video here. Oh, well yeah, here's a kind of up close version of revealing Always a satisfying moment. And then here's another one.
I'm gonna strike a chord and it's probably A minor. They not like us. They not like us. They not like. They not like. They not like us. They not like us. They not like us. They not like. They not like. They not like us. They not like us. They not like us. Freaky ass nigga here, 59 God. Freaky ass nigga here, 59 God. Hey, 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 run for your.
So yeah, that's what my practice looks like right now. I'm currently growing some Japanese mulberry in my backyard, or I was, and I had just harvested it like last weekend after 2 years of growing it. So I'm hoping to make some paper out of that soon. I'm playing around with different fibers. I had a little video here of, it doesn't matter. Oh, there we go. Some daffodil pulp paper I'm playing around with. And something I'm really excited about, diaper paper. It is possible. So I just had a baby last year. He's 1 now, and I've been changing a lot of diapers, and I did some research about how long it takes for them to decompose, and it's really bad, y'all. So I was like, all right, I can make some paper out of this. And this was not a poopy diaper, but it was a pee diaper. That's as far as I'm willing to go for the environment on that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leigh, for sharing your work with us. Our next speaker is Trey Hill, who's teaching in ceramics and sculpture. Ceramics this week, sculpture next week. And Trey is a sculptor and professor at the University of Montana, where he teaches ceramics and sculpture. He received his MFA from San Jose State University in 2002. His work has been shown in galleries and museums throughout the United States and internationally, and he has gathered travel and creative experiences through extensive artist residencies. Please join me in welcoming Trey.
Hi, folks. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of take you through my work, but it's going to be a bit of a journey through my career. And how I put this together is I thought a lot about the students who are going to be here right now. And what I think is really important is that you all came out here. And you came out here to do this. And it's kind of taking a big chance to do this. And so I titled this lecture Saying Yes. Because a lot of the things in my career that have helped me and to kind of make the whole thing work, I almost said no to. So this is kind of perhaps me showing you examples of what worked for me. So I was never on that boat, and that's in the Baltic Sea. But one of the first things I was invited to do right out of grad school was to go to this wonderful little town in Latvia. It's on the Baltic Sea. Artists from all over the world were out there, and we made work in this town, and they did this every year. And again, I almost didn't go because I didn't have any. I always felt like I never had any money. So I scraped everything I could together and went and did this. And I built this piece. Some of the stuff's odd, so I'm going to show you some old stuff that may not hold up as well over time, but I think it's important to hear the story. So I built this piece, and this is a boat cleat. So it was a big fishing village. So I built this boat cleat. We put it out on the end of the dock, and it kind of made sense there, and then folks accidentally started tying their boats up to it. It wasn't made for that, so none of that worked. So then they put it on this stump in front of the boating museum, and well, fine. So about that time, I went back to California. I was pretty young, and I was working in a steel fabrication shop. And this is the Archie Bray in the 50s. It's an old brick factory. But now it's a wonderful, amazing artist residency. And again, I was sitting there. I was working in the steel shop. I would work in my studio in the evening. And I was trying to figure out if I could even afford to do this and go out here. And I said, I don't know, let me think about it. And I talked to one of my professors, and she says, you get back on the phone and tell them you're going. Like, if you lost your mind. So anyway, I went out here, and it was a wonderful experience. And for some of the folks in my class, see how all those things are sitting in boxes? That's what I was talking about, building those things in the round. So this is my studio in the Archie Bray. And when I moved out there, I was looking at, I had come from San Jose, California, and before that, I had come from Ohio. When I got to California, I was kind of shocked by lots of different things. It was very different. And something I became pretty interested in was attraction and seduction and beauty. And I was questioning that. So I was looking at that, and you'll see fishnet stockings, you'll see tanks from motorcycles. And then I moved to Montana, and that work was still resonating. And I got out there, and I was kind of shocked by that. Every time I moved, I seemed to be a little bit shocked by where I landed. And one of the first things I noticed when I got to Montana was pickup trucks with testicles hanging off the back. And I thought, what in the world? And so I just kind of adopted that into my work and added an extra one to just really fit in a bit. You can see this boat cleat in here, and there's some imagery in this that is recognizable. I guess kind of recognizable. You can see the wishbone there, and that's a wishbone made out of a mold of my two arms. And then there's a boat cleat, and then there's an abstracted part of a leg, kind of a knee shape. And so I started doing these pieces with lots of different parts. And the piece, my goal here was to have the pieces communicate kind of like poetry. And you can see there's a decoy, there's a soft canteen. The piece of lead is an element of a sexton. And then there's an abstracted internal organ. And my goal with this was to put all these objects together and have them create this kind of quiet narrative that was hard to read and hard to understand. And what was I found really interesting about that was as I would explain these to people and kind of give them all the answers, I used the sexton for this reason and I used the wishbone for this. I kind of answered all the questions for them, and then they became less interested in the work. So then I started to kind of understand perhaps building a little mystery into my own work. So I started saying a little bit less about some things, but I will tell you a few things or it's all a little bit too vague. I'm interested at this time, now and then, I was interested in the things that are just beyond what we can see. Like the sexton, that idea of traveling beyond, it's guiding us, but you can't quite see. It's guiding us to where we can't see. The wishbone is the idea of this thing that's right in front of us, perhaps this wish that we're not upon yet. So I started to combine these images, or these objects, and about this time, so that was happening at the Archie Bray. About that time, this wonderful man named Ichi Shu came over to my studio and said, hey, I'd love to bring you to China. We're opening this museum for North American ceramics, and we're collecting artists, essentially, and we're bringing them over there. We have you build work. So again, I thought, wonderful. I just got to kind of get myself out there. And so after the Bray, I went to this other residency called the LH Project in Oregon. I built this giant sculpture over there. These folks saw it, bought it, put it in their yard, and this little project enabled me to go to China. This is us installing it. And this is the piece. So this is like all kind of lessons I'm perhaps trying to pass on to. This one's another real key one. When you install something and you might never go back to that place, right? You can take the picture, get the garden hose out of the way, get all that stuff. I never even noticed that until people are like, why didn't you move that garden hose? I was like, oh, right. So anyways, my take on my work and any success I have is to put that back into my work and to put that back into my studio and just fold everything back in. So that enabled me. So I went out to China, and I've been there probably 4 different times to different studios and had time to work out there. And look at this. Like, saying yes to things and going places mean you get to meet all these wonderful people. This is Nighty. He's a Thai artist. This is Katushka. She was from Chile. This is Nico. And like, look at the wonder in his face. Like, going somewhere new and having these experiences was just amazing for me. This is just wet work in China. You'll see that piece in the front right here finished. Folks in my class, that's black copper. Talking about that black copper, so this will kind of, you can get a read on it. So about that time, I moved, I went to China. I made work out there. I went back and forth a few times. And then when I was over there, I met a woman named Virginia Scotchy who said, hey, why don't you come and teach for me at the University of South Carolina while I was on sabbatical? So I went and did that, and then I had a wonderful experience there, and then the job came up that I have now. So then I moved out there to Montana. But all these things happened because I kind of put myself in the position to be out there and go do something. So I moved to Montana when I still felt like, I wasn't from Montana, and everybody in Montana is very proud of being from Montana. So I thought, okay, I'm going to figure this out. So I built, I thought, okay, I'm going to understand these elements. So I built, everybody out there seemed fascinated with deer, so I built the hindquarters of a white-tailed deer. That seemed like the important part. I covered it with fishnet stocking. I put a unicycle seat on it because that felt kind of like how I was traveling through the space. And then I built a stool for a little bit of extra support that I felt like I needed. Again, moving to Montana, everybody loved horses. My only horse experience was a hobby horse. So these are the little plastic hobby horse. So when I moved out there, one of the first things I did was build a studio. And again, any money that I had, I just put back into it. And these are like my friends and my students. Some built the studio. And this is the inside of the studio. It's never been that clean again. And the thing I love about this picture is none of that work is in the world. This was like one winter. And I just made work. I made whatever I wanted to make. And I love that feeling of just nobody else has to see it. So much work that happens in my studio doesn't leave the studio, and I'm really comfortable with that. So about that time, this is where the work changes a bit. About that time, I was trying to think about, again, I was interested in these things that we can't see and things that are a bit intangible. And I was also, I had a bit of a flashback to these ideas of beauty, and I was questioning that. So I thought, well, I hung all these images up of historic Greek and Roman stone pieces carved so beautifully, and they're all about beauty, and they're stunning, and they're pretty sexy. But I was also balancing that idea of that thing that you can't see, or the things that kind of go unnoticed. And what I noticed was all those little trees that hold these sculptures up. Almost, I would say half of these stone pieces have trees in the that go about halfway up the leg that support these. They keep them from breaking off at the ankle. They're not really rendered in the same way as the rest of the piece. They're pretty rough. And they're meant to kind of look past, but they hold the whole thing up. They're like the workhorse down there. So I was like, I think I've been looking at this the whole time and looking at the wrong thing. So then I was still doing these, and this one's pretty stiff. So this is still kind of that older work where I was putting things together. And then there's a lot, obviously there's tons of pieces that you don't see in between all this, but so here comes these trees with all the branches cut off. And there's a leg and the cones from the rods and the cones in our eyes, and the wishbone has kind of become very minimal down in the bottom. So then the trees started to become the main part of the piece. And then folks in our class, you can see this is steel up here. So this is kind of like drawing with steel. This is something that we can do. You can see the sexton that's still in this, that big arc that looks like a bow. And then you can see a street light up there that illuminates down and lights up the gold leaf below that. So the trees started to become a lot more important in the work. And then I wondered if I could make the trees and have them be the thing, if they were strong enough without the other work to carry it. So this is me in China. I got invited to go out for maybe 2 months and have a show in Xi'an. So I went out and made all this work. That's really giant work. And I made it pretty fast. I was super excited about it. They seemed excited about it. And then I went back home, and I left that work there for, I don't know, maybe 9 months. So I went home, and I started making these again, but I was doing them when I wasn't in such a hurry. And they swam through space in a different way, and they felt really different than the other ones. And I kept making them. So this is some of the work that was happening at that time. Here's some details. And what's happening here on the surface is pretty important for my work, and I want to talk about that a little bit. I've always struggled with figuring out how to get the right surface on my work. I'm a builder, and I think about my work all the time, but I was detached from it. So I started to figure out how to do this, and what I've been doing is I'll build these pieces, and I pour water on them, gallons of water, get them soaked, and then I take, essentially, it's underglazed, but you can think about it as pigment, and I just pour it on the top, and then I pour water, and I pour pigment, and I pour water. So it gets to kind of be the conductor. It's a bit out of my control. I get to pick the color and where it goes and how much is on there. But then as you can see, it runs down the pieces, and the piece dictates where it goes. So the surface and the form finally felt like they were working together to me. Here's some more of them. So I went back to China, and I saw these pieces, and I was like, boy, I don't like those anymore. So I had a show, like right around the corner in a big space, and they needed a lot of work. And we smashed all these. And they were like, you've kind of lost your mind a little bit. But the people were very supportive and quite wonderful. And look at all these pots. So this was happening in the same studio I was in. And if you deal with clay, you can look at this and go, oh, this gives me anxiety to look at that much open clay. Like, look at this. This is amazing. So he was interested in what I was doing. I was very interested in what he was doing. And through a translator, we both were talking. We said, we should do something together. And so we did this. And I just rebuilt that show. And it was wonderful. And it was a great, it's not really, people are like, oh, what a nice collaboration. It wasn't really a collaboration. That's more of an interaction. This is more kind of a conjoining, if you will. It was fast, too. It happened pretty fast. And then I put the show together. And I came back and I was like, great, I have like 3 days left in China to be calm and not work so hard. And he had 3 more of those giant gourd pieces in my studio. And he's like, let's do the big ones. And so the reason I show this, because I think it's kind of funny, see that line of sweat on my shirt? There's a taxi waiting for me at this moment to go to the airport. It was like working that hard up to the last minute to finish. And you can see people were helping me. You can see in the background there's somebody helping me. So I have really started building these pieces and have had a hard time stopping. I've done lots of different things in the interim between them, and I wake up in the morning thinking about them, and I go to bed thinking. It's like anyways, I enjoy making them, and I can't stop thinking about them. But something I want to say about these tree pieces is that they have become a way that I think about myself now, because they're these quiet moments where something is being held up and nobody really notices that. And I kind of liken it to some of the best parts of our own humanity when we help each other. But we don't help each other for everybody to see us helping each other. We help each other quietly. We support each other. And these pieces remind me, not to sound too kind of kumbaya here, but remind me of the kind of person that I want to be. And right now in this such divisive world, it feels like the one thing we can do for each other is really to show up and be supportive. So I am overly interested in making them. And some of them are big. This one's probably 6 feet. So there's our kiln. So I built this kiln at my studio at home, and then I moved it to the university. So there you can see me standing. This kiln's about 9 feet. And these are some bigger ones. There's steel elements on the bottom. Some have glaze, some have underglaze. Some in people's houses. Are those really tall and stretched skinny? You all probably can't tell. Do they look stretched skinny? They look really skinny to me. And maybe it's my angle. So what's becoming more important to these pieces now is the steel elements. I used to think of them as bases, and I think that's kind of a starting place. And now I think of them as elements to the pieces and parts that can add to it instead of just hold the piece up. It's easy to kind of think, and it's common, we all say this, I'm not really interested in pedestals, I'm going to do my own thing and build this thing. But then sometimes it kind of just becomes a pedestal, just made out of another material. So I've really tried to figure out, again, by using like elements of balance and structure, all laying back into that idea of support. That's not a great image. So I'm just going to click through a couple of them here. These are all pretty new. I work all the time. These are a couple that just went to the Billings Airport. And then I'm almost done because I think I'm about out of time. This is a steel piece I did for a couple just outside of town. And they knew I was doing this work with trees, and they said, hey, can you do some steel aspen trees for us? And I was like, maybe. And so I went out to their place and looked around, and I kind of sat there, and then I went out there at night, and I sat there, and I was sitting there at night, and the Pleiades, the constellation, was coming up right above this, and I was like, well, that's kind of amazing. And I thought about it. It took me a little while to figure out how I was going to do this, so I agreed to make these things, and that sounds bad. I enjoyed doing it. I made these trees, and you can't tell from the photo, but their placement on the ground is aligned with the constellation. And so my goal was to, what I was trying to do was to kind of bring the stars down and the ground up. And here, what I love is how you can see where this is the day I'm installing it. You can see how the pieces become so much more dense as you look through them from the side. And then I did this little thing and I didn't tell them. And it's hard to notice this, it seems really obvious here, but I wanted to also kind of locate it on the ground, so I made this kind of scope that goes off and locates to the highest mountain by their place. And it would be surprising a little bit if they actually noticed it was there. So here's me at my studio at home. I'm usually wearing this shirt, actually, the one I'm wearing there. But you can see the pieces, and this is a smoke plume piece that I'm working on. So anyways, hey, the thing I wanted to show you my work, but what I really wanted to kind of get across through some of this, if I can, because a lot of you I'll probably never see again, is I really believe that things that you do with your work, when opportunities come up, it's really worthwhile to say yes to them. And I tell you, you gamble all the time with stuff, right? Oh, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that. I would put your money into yourself. Put your money back into your work. Figure out how to get enough money to get on the plane and go do these things, because it really doesn't just pay off for opportunities in the future, but it pays off for ways that your work grows at spaces like this. And anyways, you're doing this right now because you're here. So I'm applauding you for being here. I think I have maybe one more image. So that's Olivia and my son August. I thought they were going to be here tonight for this. That's why I put this in, to make August happy. But I should show my family and my work anyway, so here they are. Okay, that's my last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Trey, for sharing. We have time for some questions. We're going to have, that's going to bring some chairs. So if anyone has any questions, I'll bring the mic over to you. So.
Thank you both so much for sharing. I have some questions about advice for Andrew. So, Jamie, how do you protect your emotional energy when making work that's so personal and politically charged?
I don't, and it's a problem.
To be honest.
Yeah, I think that's really bubbled up for me in my last year of motherhood. There's just so much emotion that a person can handle, and after having a baby, I had to kind of recenter and refocus, and yeah, for my mental health and my emotional health, I'm kind of taking a step back from the really heavy political stuff. So I did make a line cut recently that's called "How to Raise a Baby During," what is it? How to Raise a Baby While Fighting Fascism. Or the other way, how to fight fascism while raising a baby. And it's me like breastfeeding, and the TV's on, and it's just the daily chaos that is happening right now. This overwhelming feeling. So in like some ways, I'm trying to make these lighthearted responses, but I think I'll be able to handle it maybe in a couple more years. But I mean, you know how the phone is? It's some shit right now. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, then for Trey. What advice would you give artists trying to pursue large-scale sculptures without institutional support?
That's a good question. I think I would figure out how to use whatever material you can and work at whatever space you can. You can work outside. So I had a studio when I got out of grad school, but it was just outside under a tarp. And I think you can kind of work anywhere. And I just really believe that the biggest part is just keep making. And I also think even if you want to make large-scale sculptures, sometimes maybe you can, but you can draw it, you know, and you can make stuff out of paper, and you can make other things. I would just say, keep a hold of whatever you can get a hold of.
Hey Leigh, so the slide you showed of the basket of strawberries, all of those faces,
From memory, I think I probably did some internet researching too. So they're all kind of ambiguous, representations of people. But yeah, no specifics in there.
So, Trey, can you talk about how those trees are made?
Sure. They're all hollow, and they're made with coils. So just one coil after another coil after another coil. And there's a little tool called a rib, and you just run that over it, and run that over it, and run that over it. My colleague kind of jokes. She's like, you should figure out how many miles you have on those ribs. But they're hollow. And, you know, I think a lot of people, when they think about coils, they think about those lines and how you can see that. But on a lot of that work that's smooth, I want some of them to have that touched feel, but some of them I want to be smooth. So I do that, and I fire them, and then I get them out of the kiln, and then I sand them with a palm sander. Because then when I'm pouring those underglazes over there, it just lets it cascade down and really, it really takes advantage of the form. So they're all hollow, and they're not that thick. They're maybe, at the bottom, they're maybe 3/4 of an inch, and at the top, maybe 5/8.
Okay, and Leigh, why silkscreen? I mean, you have all those printmaking techniques available to you, but so was your early work all silkscreen? And if so, why screen printing?
Oh man, how do I even answer that? I love screen printing. It's like, I think it works well with my brain, just the kind of color separation. But also it's fast, it's quick, so I can make really large editions. And something that's always been really exciting for me with printmaking is like the history of printmaking and its relationship and connotation with political movements, right? Like throughout history, every major political movement since printing was invented has had printmaking involved. So I love the idea that I can be like a small part of that conversation. And with screen printing, it's something that allows me to make really big editions so I can show my work all over the place, but I can also like give it to friends and family. And I like to make work that's really colorful as well. And because I think that the color can sometimes make my work a little bit more accessible if I'm talking about these really hard things that no one wants to hear about anymore because we're proliferated with this, violence and imagery all the time. So I think that bright colors kind of help the viewer come in, and then I like to poke them in the eye with something. And bright colors and screen print work really well together because, I could do the same with relief and intaglio, but those screen print colors are so vibrant.
I have a question for both of you that has to do with scale. For Leigh, I'm curious about, you have a background in printmaking, and some of your work started to deal with building structures and working with tile and making almost installation work. I'm curious how changing the scale of your work to 3D and in terms of building enhanced or changed like the meaning of your work?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. It's all so new, so I don't know if I have a real answer for this, but I'm an external processor, so we'll just see what happens. But yeah, I was talking to somebody just about this today in the studio. Who was that? I said, I'm like a goldfish because I'll just fill up a space. Was that you, Drew? So yeah, we were talking about studio spaces, and I'm a goldfish. Like, if you give me a small space, I'll just like fill it up, and I'll do what I can. And then if you give me a big space, and that's kind of what I had. We had just built like my kind of dream studio at our house in Ohio, and it was nice and big, and I was like, I'm gonna work big, and I did. And then I got pregnant, which changes things, so that kind of scaled some things down, and then I moved across the country, and my stuff's all in boxes. So I'm kind of back to working small, but the little components, like the tiles, I think are working well for me because there's something small that I can do a little bit here, a little bit there, and then they'll ultimately become a larger installation. But I forgot what your question kind of was.
That kind of answered it, like
Just about scale.
How scale impacts your work, yeah.
Oh yeah, and one last thing I'll say maybe is that the large scale really feels, it's like monumental, and it like takes up a lot of attention and space and like commands energy maybe, or presence in the room. So this work about my grandfather and celebrating him, I wanted to feel really large and impactful, and for people to go into an art space and see someone with a third grade education, like here he is, he's important. So that's another thing I think about with the scale, yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. And similar question for you,
Sure.
Trey, is have you always, it seems like your work has always been on a very large scale. I'm wondering
Yep.
how that impacts your work and if that's important to your work. It seems so, but.
It is important, and you know, it makes things harder. Just simply, it's easier to move the smaller pieces around. It's easier to handle. The kilns don't have to be as massive, but I've made a real conscious effort to build large scale work, and I like the way it feels to walk up to something that's as big as you are, and to have this kind of bodily connection with it. I keep doing this, you know what I mean? Because there feels like this interaction that happens with the work at that scale. It also, it's challenging to build that big work, and I like that. I mean, you know, clay wants to like lay on the ground and just be like a puddle on the ground. So to get it to feel like it can beautifully swim through space and exist like that is appealing to me. And it keeps me coming back to the studio. And I like to go up and down the ladder, and I don't mind, you know? And then the scale for me has really, it also feels kind of natural. It's the scale that my hands like to work at, and it's the scale I like to see my work at.
Very cool. Thank you.
I think my question is also can address to both of you. For Leigh, that you are using the tiles, and which is very significant in your country, in your ancestral background. Can you talk about that, the choice that you are picking these patterns and making it tiles? And then for Trey, and to me, like tree is so significant, so symbolic. Can you talk about that a little bit more? Why tree? Life of tree.
Yeah, so I'll say like the significance of the tile, of course, is the connection with my grandfather. But yeah, I have been thinking like deeper and more conceptually about the tile as like this building component, something so small that can make, you know, large monumental things. The patterns that I'm using themselves, a lot of them are talavera tiles, which are very culturally significant in Mexico. And they have an interesting history because you see really similar talavera style from places like the Philippines and other countries that were all colonized by Spain. So it, you know, it originated in Spain and is actually kind of a marker for colonization. So that's another thing I've been thinking about with the work and how that might tie into this conversation of like assimilation and cultural, you know, molding, colonization, and all of those sort of things.
So my use of it is really, again, very directly referencing the work in those marble sculptures and the way they held that all together. And that, I love the simplicity of that act and the kind of the beauty of that act. And so that's what got me started on them. And then I also, my whole life have been kind of fascinated with them and with the forms and how they grow. It's one of the most sculptural things in nature. The way that, I mean, it's kind of unbelievable that they can stand. So I find myself taking photos of trees as I move around and travel. But in, you know, kind of to the core of the reason is drawn straight to those marble pieces and that connection.
This one's for Trey. In the latest work that has, and maybe even the piece that's out here, the pedestal or the base piece, the metal piece, has sort of this, the tree symbolism of sort of a connection below, above. It seems like the below piece has become something that's interesting within the space that's a little bit more abstracted, and I'm wondering what you're thinking about within.
Yep, that's a good question. And I think about that a lot, and in a 20-minute talk, I kind of compressed a lot of things, so I was just kind of sitting here thinking about things I didn't say, so I'm glad you asked that. That's a big post, so I used a lot of these reclaimed lumber from Montana, from these historic buildings, and again, going back to this idea of foundations and buildings and structure. So I put that under there, but then that post floats under there and kind of, a lot of times with the element that's underneath, it kind of gets challenged in a way, it floats. I thought I had an image in here of a piece I just built, and I forgot, I actually just brought it down to Sam. It has a steel element in it, and then inside of that, I'm starting to use some marble referencing the marble from the original sculptures. So some of the pieces are now having some marble elements into them. So they're tying back into kind of the basics of where the pieces come from, as well as some ideas, as well as reinforcing the ideas of structure and support.
All right. Thank you, Trey and Leigh, and thank everyone for coming.
Yeah, they were good. I love it. Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.